Hello, everyone. This is Professor DePaulo. Welcome you back to Psych 265 online, and I'm going to be talking about how to write the method section. The introduction section took a little bit more work. That's been processed and graded and commented on, so you can review that and make any changes you need to make for the final paper that's due at the end of the semester. So I'd advise you to actually make those changes as we go along so you're not making them all at the last second. The method section is much easier than the introduction. The introduction is a challenging assignment because it's kind of the first type of assignment that you've written like this, and it requires research and synthesis and summarizing it and paraphrasing, which is challenging and citing correctly. The method section is much easier to write, and it should only take you about 10 minutes to write this section. So if you go under the assignments tab, you click on the assignments tab, you'll have all the assignments that are due, and the method section is due on 3/28, end of the week at 11:59 p.m. You can submit it here as a PDF file, so you can save it as a PDF file and submit it. The instructions are right here where it says method COVID study. So let's click on that. That brings you to basically a, a shell of how I want you to write the method section. Like I said, it's really easy. Stylistically, it's not hard at all. So what you want to do is you want to write the word method, just as I've written it up here. You want to center it in a regular 12-point font, and just center it at the top. And then you want to write participants, and this should be in italics. So this is what's called a subheading. So you're going to have the word participants in italics, 12-point font, right? And then right below it, so the line below it, you're going to start writing. So I know I've written next to it because I've written the instructions, but when you write participants in italics here as your subheading, you're going to basically enter, and you're going to start right here on the line below participants. And then you're going to give me one or two sentences describing the total number of participants. So there were 19 participants. There were 2 males and 17 females. Out of those 19 participants, total participants, there were 2 males, 17 females. And the age range. For this study, I only received 19 responses. Some of them came in late, and which is why I kept pushing this back a bit because I wanted to get all the data in. For some reason, half of the students in my 2 sections, almost half, a little bit less than half, did not fill out the survey. Now it's too late to do that now, but you were supposed to be doing this a few weeks back, and I only received 19 responses. Once again, 17 females, 2 males. The age range for these 19 participants was between 19 and 54. So the age range was 19 to 54. And these participants were recruited from a research and psychology class at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. Right, that's what you're taking. You're taking a research and psychology class at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. So you just basically write that out. There were 19 participants, 17 female, 2 male were recruited, ranging in age and where they were recruited from. So you can write that as 1 or 2 sentences. Done with participants. For the materials, this is even easier. So you're going to do italics materials, 12-point font, start on the line below, where my cursor is, the line below. And you're going to basically describe that participants completed an online survey that took approximately 20 to 30 minutes to complete. So that's all you have to write, is that participants completed an online survey uh, that took approximately 20 to 30 minutes. There's nothing really else to write there because it's just a basic survey. Now, if you were doing an experiment, would then need to basically describe, how you randomly assign participants to conditions and what the conditions were. One group got, a placebo or the control condition. The other group got the independent variable, whatever you're manipulating. So there would be like multiple paragraphs here, exactly what was being done. But in the case of doing a survey online, you just have to write that because there's nothing else to report. It's a very straightforward idea in terms of the materials, right? I mean, if it was an experiment, you would have to describe, there's a control condition, there's an experimental condition. You would have to talk about what materials the control condition got, which ones got, what materials the experimental condition got. It can get a bit more complex. It's not going to take that long to do that normally, a couple paragraphs possibly, but it's much more complex than just doing a survey online. So, one or two sentences about how the survey was completed online and, the rough time estimate, 20 or 30 minutes that it took to complete it. Now, in the procedure, once again, very basic. So, it's going to be italics, 12 point font, and then start on the line below the word procedure. And you're going to talk about what happened during the study. Well, the students completed a survey, participants completed a survey that measured. Now, tell me what the survey measured here, because you basically told me that you did the online survey was used in the material subsection, right? So we know you're doing a survey. So you completed a survey measuring COVID health behaviors and attitudes about COVID, right? Because that's what we're studying. We're studying whether people are behaving based on the guidelines for COVID and their attitudes towards COVID and these behavioral adjustments they had to make. And then you want to also say that you're measuring anxiety, you're measuring depression, you're measuring health related behaviors, you're measuring attachment style, you're measuring empathy, you're measuring things like health anxiety and somatization. So you should all have that in there. You should have anxiety, general anxiety, health anxiety, somatization, depression, health related behaviors and attitudes, empathy, attachment style. In particular, we're measuring attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance, somatization. All of these things were measured. Empathy, if I didn't mention that before. And just write it out. So you're basically saying that you're completing the survey and the survey is measuring all these different things. And that's it. And that's a really, really basic way to write up the method. Now, if I were to write this up for a publication, it would be a little bit different because I would then want to include things like reliability and validity. So all the scales that I'm using, I'd want to talk about the scales. So I'd want to list, how many items were on the scale, were there any subscales within the scale itself, and I would want to list the reliabilities and the validities of the scales. That's if I were to write it up for publication. Because you need to provide more detail. You need to tell the reviewer, the people that are actually going to do peer review on your articles, because your articles are reviewed by your peers. So they're reviewed by other scientists, other psychologists, and they need to know why you're using the scales that you're using, why you're using the survey that you're using. You need to kind of justify why it's appropriate. And so you need reliability and validity information like we talked about in the previous chapters. In other words, you don't want to make up your own survey and then just use it. Because if you make up your own survey, you don't know if it's reliable or valid. And if you use it and you get good results with it, then when you write it up, you have to justify why you did this. Why did you make up your own survey? Were the other surveys inferior? What was sort of the thinking? And did you validate your survey? Is it reliable? I mean, should I place any importance in your survey? And that could be a big problem. So it's mainly an issue about using established measures for your research versus coming up with my own. I can write an improved survey that can measure things better than everybody else did it. Probably not. It's really hard to write the survey. I probably have mentioned this multiple times before, but it's hard to write your own survey. So if I were writing this up for publication, you would need a ton of more stuff in this section, justifying why you're using this kind of survey. But for this exercise, I'm using scales that have been established already. So I have not written any of these items myself. These are already established scales that have been used for years. This isn't just something I just wrote up these questions. No, these are already published scales. And so I'm sparing you the pain of actually going through the literature and finding reliabilities and validities for these things because you're not sending this in for publication. This is just to learn. But if you were doing this in real life, trying to publish something, you would want those reliabilities and validities to justify why you're using the scales that you're using. So let's just review really fast again. So method should be centered in regular font, regular 12-point font, whatever you're using. Times New Roman, Arial, I don't know what font you're using, but use a regular font. Don't use something crazy. Center it, 12-point font, and then skip a line, skip 2 lines if you want. And then participants, flush left, so don't indent it, flush left margin, 1-inch margin. Italics, 12-point font. And then 1 to 2 sentences describing your participants. So we had 19 total participants, 2 males, 17 females. Obviously, I would like to have more males participate, but given that it's a psychology class and psychology classes tend to be heavily female, we have this imbalance. 17 females, 2 males. So looking at gender is going to be a problem. And that's something I kind of wanted to look at. But with two males, it's going to be almost impossible to look at that. So 17 females, 2 males, 19 total. Age range 19 to 54, which is fine. There's a little bit of an age range, which is what I would be interested in looking at anyway. And they were recruited from a research and psychology class at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. The materials, italics once again, 12-point font, and then always start the subheadings, start the line below the actual subheadings. So right below materials, you'll start. Give me 1 or 2 sentences talking about an online survey that took approximately 20 or 30 minutes to complete. And then procedure, italicize, 12-point font. Start the line below procedure. Students were required to complete the survey, an online survey that measured COVID and health behaviors and attitudes, and then tell me what was measured, all the variables. So the survey measured depression, general anxiety, health anxiety, somatization, attachment, all the stuff I mentioned before. And that's it. And then you're done. So literally like 10 minutes, maybe less. So there's no reason why this should be a problem when I grade it. Most of the time, the problem is stylistically. So you didn't do what I told you to do with italics or the subheadings and starting on the line below the subheadings. People screw up. They just don't follow directions very well. So please do not be one of these people that cannot follow directions. If you can follow directions here, this should be 10 out of 10. There should be no issues at all. I mean, the introduction, 10 out of 10 is not reasonable to expect because it's a difficult assignment. So if you got 9 out of 10, that's great. If you got 8 out of 10, that's good. Anything less than that's okay. Obviously, if you got 5 out of 10 or 0 out of 10, that's a problem. 0 out of 10 meaning you didn't do it or didn't submit it. But I expect this part to be, this should be a home run. This should be like a no-brainer, right? It should not be an issue here. If there's any questions, you can email me or come to my office hours. But I think this is pretty self-explanatory. You'll have the entire week to do it. It should take you about 10 minutes. Save it as a PDF. Submit it. You can submit it through the assignment portal. So go to assignments here and then find method here and then click where you're going to upload it. And that's it. upload as a PDF. I'll grade it next week. Won't take me long to grade. And then we can move on to more important things, which will be the results, which I'll do myself for you. I'll analyze the data for you because it's hard to analyze the data, especially at your level right now. And then you'll have the discussion, which will be difficult to write. And then the title, abstract, and references, which will be okay, but the abstract's harder to write. The references is just following directions, and the title is kind of not very difficult. It takes not long to come up with a title. And then once you've done everything, we'll add the results in at the end. And then when you rewrite everything, you'll put the results that I will write the results for you. You'll put that in your paper, and you'll have your final paper. You'll submit it at the end of the semester, and then I will give you a grade on that. And then your final paper grade will be 50% of the rough draft grade and 50% of the revised copy grade. And the reason I do that is because I want you to actually try on the rough draft. I don't want you to just submit anything with the idea that you're going to submit it later and not put any effort in. The goal is to actually try to spend time on the rough drafts and learn from your mistakes, rather than just submit something at the last second just to get it over with and then try to work on it at the end. And you'll see that if you put effort into these rough drafts, the revised paper will be very easy to submit. If you're not putting effort into the rough drafts, the final paper will be very difficult to revise everything. It'll just be, a really laborious task. So, pretty basic stuff. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I'll see you back for more instruction in terms of the online modules that I've done for you and the write-ups for the paper. Okay, so hope that helps you out, and bye for now.